Peanut Foundation. And earlier to this position, he worked in University of Georgia till December 2014 and got degrees in botany and plant pathology from Auburn University and PhD in entomology from Clemson University in USA. He has served as a faculty member at Auburn University and UGA, where he attained the rank of professor. At UGA, Dr. Brown was the extension entomologist for peanuts and stored agricultural products. He spent much of his time during the 1990s working on solutions to tomato spotted wilt virus that threatened the industry at that time. He worked closely with the American Peanut Sellers Association to provide training on the management of pests of farmers' stock peanuts. Dr. Brown's administrative experience includes 2 years as the interim assistant dean for the UGA Tifton campus, 1 year as interim director of the Peanut and Mycotoxin Innovation Lab, which is known as PMIL in short form, and 6 years as assistant dean for extension, where he coordinated all agricultural and natural resources programming in UGA cooperative extension. He has 33 years of experience in cooperative extension, has authored more than 23 referred journal publication and hundreds of extension publications. Most importantly, he's an important link between the basic research, applied research, farmers, seed industry, extension, like a whole network chain. So he has a big role to play as a director in Peanut Foundation and supporting research globally. So please welcome him with me like that, and we'll listen to him.
Thank you, Manish, for that very good welcome. Thank all of you for your hospitality. This is my first visit to ICRISAT. I've heard of ICRISAT for as long as I've been working on peanuts, but this is my first opportunity to come visit. And everybody has been very, very nice. I really appreciate your hospitality while I've been here. We'll talk about the Peanut Foundation. You can call it the Groundnut Foundation if you want to. We use peanut in the U.S., but groundnut's okay too. I am fairly new in this role as the executive director. I just started January 1st of last year. So I'm still learning about this job. Howard Valentine was in this position before me for 20 years probably. And he's still working with the foundation some and helping me in the transition. So some of you may have had the opportunity to meet Howard Valentine in the past. You can notice our logo there at the top of that banner, the little microscope. That's our official logo for the Peanut Foundation. You may see that around some places. And then at the bottom, the slogan, advancing industry through research. That's what we do. Manish already talked about my background, so I won't go over this again, but you can see from the color of my hair that I've been around a while. So I've been doing this a long time, and I've had a lot of different roles to play in the peanut industry in the U.S. from a lot of different perspectives. And I guess some could say that I've got a real broad background. I've done a little bit of a lot of things, but I'm probably not real good at anything, but I have done a lot of things. Let's talk about the U.S. peanut industry a little bit. It's very different, of course, but there's good and bad about it. But I want to begin by saying that, of course, the peanut industry in the U.S. it's very mechanized, it's very efficient compared to most production systems in the world. But it's what we call horizontally integrated. That means that we've got growers, we've got shellers, we've got manufacturers, and we've got allied industries. We have all these different groups that are part of the whole industry, and they don't do more than their one thing. In some countries, you have a very vertically integrated industry, where in Australia, for example, the Peanut Company of Australia does all of those things. They grow some peanuts, they shell them, they process them, and they make products that they sell. So this particular scenario is very different. Peanut production, process, and manufacturing accomplished by different groups, each with their own incentives. They've all got their own idea of how they can make money in the peanut industry. Sometimes these groups, as you can imagine, they don't always get along. For the most part they do, but sometimes there's differences of opinion about policy. It may be government policy or grading standards or a lot of different subjects that these various groups sometimes don't always agree on. Each group has formed organizations to represent their interests. It's a very organized group, and every group has come together to form their specific organization that looks after their particular interest. First, let's talk about the grower organizations. We've got each of the major producing states in the United States. There's probably 10 or 12 states that produce a significant amount of peanuts, and each one of them has their own grower organization. For example, in Georgia, where Baju and I are from, it's the Georgia Peanut Commission. They are the organization that represents the interest of the Georgia peanut producers. There is a national peanut board that represents all U.S. growers, and it's governed by a board of directors. These are farmers that are on the board of directors. They are elected by their different states to represent them at the national level on the National Peanut Board. State and national groups are voted into existence by the growers. That's very important. Nobody just makes them have an organization. This is their own organization. They do it on their own. They voted it into existence, and they can vote it out of existence. Every 3 years, there's a vote. The farmers have to come together and they say, do we want to continue the Georgia Peanut Commission or do we want to do away with it? And it's been very successful. Normally, the vote is very strong to renew the Georgia Peanut Commission and the National Peanut Board. The budget comes from what we call a checkoff. This is a tax, a self-tax that is imposed on the growers when they take their peanuts to a buying point to sell their peanuts at harvest time. A certain amount of that money that they get comes out of that automatically and goes to these organizations. So in Georgia, for example, a grower pays $2 per ton to the Georgia Peanut Commission. He also pays 1% to the National Peanut Board. So that would total, assuming the grower got about $500 a ton for his peanuts, and it varies some, but on an average, say he got $500 a ton, he's going to take $7 of that $500 and he's going to pay it to these organizations. And as long as the organization is voted into existence, there's no choice. It's mandatory that much has to come out. So basically a 1.5% that they're going to invest in that organization. The money is used for promotion of peanut consumption. They do a lot of promotional activity to go around telling people about how good peanuts are and how good for you they are and try to keep consumption up. And a lot of it goes to research. The National Peanut Board, for example, about $2 million a year comes back into research out of those funds that come from the growers. So this is a significant amount of money that goes back into research to support the industry. Here's a picture of peanut harvest in Georgia, a very mechanized process. These are big combines that go over 8 rows at a time, and they can harvest a field very quickly. But the grower, you have to imagine what they're interested in, what they want their organization to do for them. They want high yields, they want low production costs, they want fair grading standards, and they want good prices, right? They want to get the most money they can for their efforts. Now let's talk about the buying points, the place where these farmers go to sell their peanuts in the fall. Some are operated by shellers, and I learned a new word while I was here this week, decorticators, right? I wasn't familiar with that term, so you may call them decorticators, but we call them shellers. Some of these buying points are operated by the sheller. Others are independently operated. But they all basically do the same thing. They provide vehicles for transport from the field. They provide drying facilities. they house the grading facility. Now, the grading facility is run by a state and federal inspection service, government entity that actually does the official grading of the peanuts, but the buying point would provide the facility for that. They pay the growers. A grower can contract his peanuts with a buyer, with a sheller, before he even plants the peanuts. Sometimes they'll contract for that amount. So they know exactly what they're going to get per ton based on the grade that they get. Other times they may not contract, and it goes into a government loan program. For example, there's no contract. They're going to basically give their peanuts to the government. The government's going to give them a loan for those peanuts until the government sells those peanuts and then distributes the profits to the growers. So either one of those scenarios can happen, but that process is going to happen at the buying point. They also transport the peanuts to a storage facility after they're dried, after they're graded. They've got to go somewhere, so they go to a facility that's owned by the buying point, or it may be owned by a sheller, but typically a large flat storage building. These people are represented by the National Peanut Buying Point Association. This is a voluntary organization. You do not have to be a part of it, but most of the buying points participate, and they pay their dues into this association to be a part of it. And their interests are taken care of through this association. All right, then we'll have the shellers, the decorticators. They maintain the storage facilities. They shell the peanuts. They segregate by size, by holes, splits. Basically anything that the manufacturer wants, that's what they're going to do. If the manufacturer wants a specific size peanut, for example, Mars, if they are going to buy peanuts to make M&Ms, they're very picky about those. They want those peanuts in exact size and shape if they can get them. So the sheller has to process those peanuts in a way that they are giving them only that size and only what they want. Sometimes these shellers operate a blanching facility. Blanching is just simply removal of the skin. And the reason they would do that is for peanut butter. If they're going to make peanut butter, they typically take the skins off. Or if most of the snack peanuts have the skins removed, not all of them. So some of the blanching facilities are owned by the shellers as well. There are regional sheller organizations. In the U.S., we have three basic growing regions, what we call the Southwest, which would be Texas and Oklahoma. And then we got the Southeast with Georgia and Florida and Alabama. And then there's what we call the VC area, Virginia and Carolinas. At one time, each of those areas had their own sheller organization. Now that's changed, but there is also an American Peanut Shellers Association that represents all of those shellers. But what's happened over the last few years is there's been a lot of consolidation of the sheller entities. One buys another one, and then they buy another one, and we're down to really basically three major sheller groups nationally. There's other smaller ones, but there's three major shelling groups. So there's not that many of them, but they do come together and form this association. And it's really important to realize here that these are competitors, sometimes pretty fierce competitors. There's only three big groups, and they're all vying for that farmer's business. They're trying to get the type of peanuts they want, and they're trying to sell those peanuts to the manufacturer, and it is a very competitive business. But still, even being competitors, they come together, they form this organization, and they look out for their common interest. So they'll come together for a meeting, they'll be nice to each other, and then they go home and they are fierce competitors. This is a shelling plant, a typical shelling plant. On the right there is actually a cleaning facility where the peanuts would come in and go through a cleaning process which would get out dirt, rocks, or anything that might be in the peanuts that come from the field from mechanical harvesting. And then you see the warehouse in the back. That's where the peanuts would go to be stored until they'd be pulled out and taken to a shelling plant. So what do the shellers want? They want to buy low and sell high, right? They want to buy peanuts as cheap as they can get them, and then they want to process them and they want to sell them for a profit. They got to meet food safety requirements, and that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue in the United States, and they're putting a lot of emphasis on doing the things that they have to do to meet government standards on food safety. And they basically have to satisfy whatever the manufacturer wants. All right, let's talk about the manufacturers. This would be people like Mars or Procter & Gamble or ConAgra or anybody that buys peanuts and makes some kind of product that they sell to the consumer. And there's quite a few of them. They're mostly very independent. They don't have a real strong organization, but there is an organization called the Peanut Product Manufacturers Association. So they do come together, at least in a loose organization, and look after their interest as a manufacturer of peanut products. Again, these are competitors, very fierce competitors in the marketplace, but they come together to form this association. They want low cost, of course. They want the highest quality, highest food safety standards, and highest customer satisfaction. That's the world they live in. All right, here's another one, the Peanut Institute. There's all kind of organizations. Peanut Institute funds peanut nutritional research. This is a fairly new organization, only been in existence a few years, but the industry came to realize that if we're going to build our business and we're going to sell more peanut products, then we've got to convince consumers that this product is good for you. So they actually fund research to demonstrate the fact that peanuts are good for you. And they've invested money from the industry. This is voluntary donations to the Institute, but they fund research and have really funded some research that's shown some phenomenal nutritional benefits to peanuts. All right, now then, the American Peanut Council. This is the umbrella organization. This is the one that brings all of these organizations that I just talked about together under one umbrella. So we got grower organizations, shellers, manufacturers, allied industries. We've got everybody under this umbrella, the American Peanut Council. Voluntary membership, but most of the major players in the peanut industry are members of this particular group. They pay dues, and the budget comes from that. Trucking companies, for example, I talked about allied industries. The trucking companies that move these peanuts from the warehouse to the shelling plant and then move the shelled peanuts to wherever they're going, that's pretty big business too. So they're involved with this. Ag chemical companies, a lot of different folks are interested in the peanut business. Again, governed by a board of directors that represents all the different sectors of the peanut industry. Now, finally, we get to the Peanut Foundation that we're here to talk about. The Peanut Foundation is part of the American Peanut Council, but it's the research arm, the part of the American Peanut Council that funds research. It is organized as what we call a 501c3. That's part of the U.S. tax code. And that means that we're a tax-exempt, nonprofit organization. We don't exist to make money. We exist for the common good of this industry. So we don't pay taxes under that code. By representing the entire industry, we can be flexible and support research that everyone agrees is necessary. Like I said, this is a very diverse group. Everybody's got their own different opinions, but when it all said and done, we all come together and say, research is the thing that keeps this industry going. If we don't have research, if we don't constantly improve, then the industry will die. Everybody believes that. So they fund research, and they fund the research that everybody can agree is important. Originally, the foundation spent most of its money on aflatoxin research because everybody could agree that was a major problem in the U.S. peanut industry. It's still a problem, but there was a lot of research that went into that from back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Now we are in the fourth year of a 5-year, $6 million commitment to map the peanut genome. So this is a relatively new initiative of the foundation that we will spend our efforts because all the entire American peanut industry agrees that genomics offers a lot of solutions to the problems that we have. So everybody's come together and said, we will contribute. We got $2 million from the growers, $2 million from the shellers, and $2 million from the manufacturers. So we put it together and made $6 million to fund this research project. Although we exist to support the U.S. peanut industry, we recognize the value of international collaboration. Make no mistake, this is a U.S. peanut industry organization. Everybody that's a member is part of the U.S. peanut industry. But I assure you that when we sit around the table and talk about peanut genome work, everybody recognizes that in order to get this done, we have to collaborate with people all over the world, and that what we do has to be publicly available. From the very beginning, it was decided that no one would own anything that we fund, that this would be for the good of the industry in the U.S. and for the good of worldwide peanut production. So this money's going into genomic research, and we do our best to collaborate with anyone in the world that is doing related research. We accept grant proposals annually. About every October, we'll have a call for grant proposals. It's very competitive. It's currently emphasizing genomics, marker discovery, phenotyping of diverse lines, utilization of wild species genes, breeding technology, and so forth. So that is pretty much what we're looking for right now. If you had something that was on the fringes of that, it would be considered. But because of the $6 million commitment, that's where most of our money is going right now. When this 5-year commitment is over, that may change. We may broaden out and we may be funding other things other than genomic research. Non-U.S. researchers must collaborate with a U.S. researcher. So in other words, some of our money has been coming here to ICRISAT for several years now. That's fine, but we don't contact directly with a non-U.S. entity. We expect that entity to collaborate with someone in the U.S. So Rajiv collaborates with Baju, and funding flows that way. And we're perfectly fine with that. But because of the way we're set up and the rules that we have, that's the way we have to operate. All right, confused you? A lot of different entities here. It's complex, and I assure you, I get confused sometimes too. There's a lot of different groups, and sometimes, like I say, they don't all get along, and I get caught in the middle of some of that controversy. But in the end, it's a pretty good system. And we may disagree and we may have our arguments, but in the end, we all agree that we exist for the betterment of the peanut industry as a whole. The good and bad of this type of organizational system. The bad part is it is confusing. Groups sometimes don't agree and arguments do happen. But on the good side, all segments of the industry have a mechanism to represent their concerns. Okay? Nobody's left out. There's not any group that just doesn't have any say. They just have to do what everybody else says. Everybody's got a seat at the table. Everybody can come make their argument. And because of this organization, all these different organizations have their own funding streams, then each segment has money to support their agenda and influence policy in the future direction of the industry. So it is a complex system, but a system that has worked fairly well up to this point. I would just suggest that, this system might work good in some developing countries too. And I know it's difficult when with a developing country there's so many challenges, but if the growers could decide to set aside even a small amount of what they make to support research or to support promotion or support exporting or whatever it is that's important to them, you'd be surprised at how much even a little bit of money much difference it can make. That organization, though, has got to come from the bottom up, not the top down. You can't come in and tell somebody, form an organization, and this is what you're going to do. The growers themselves have to do that. They have to come together and decide, this is good for me. I'm going to get something out of this. So when that happens, and organizational leaders are held accountable to the industry, then good things can happen. So I would just like to say that the Peanut Foundation certainly welcomes collaboration with ICRISAT. We've enjoyed a good relationship up to this point and look forward to future collaborations with ICRISAT. Germplasm exchange, breeding programs, information exchange. Perhaps information exchange is the most important of those. That we talk to each other about what we're doing, we share information, and by doing so, we get a lot more done. So that's all I had. I'll be glad to talk about any of these. I just wanted to really have an open discussion for any questions you might have. But we look forward to future collaborations. The Genomic group here is very strong, and we've had opportunities to come together at various formats. We do have a Advances in Arachis Genomics and Biotechnology Conference, AAGB. We've been having that for several years now, where people from all over the world come together. The Peanut Foundation sponsors that and allows that information exchange to happen. So we just met this past November in Brisbane, Australia. Before that, it was Savannah, Georgia. Some of you may have been there. Next time, it's going to go a little bit more than a year, but next March of 2017, we'll be having a meeting in Argentina. So I hope you can join us there for that. We don't have the exact dates yet. We'll get some information out on that when that's decided. But that's another important part of the Peanut Foundation. It's not just funding research, but being the vehicle to bring people together to work and collaborate. Any questions? I'd be glad to.
So questions time. No questions? No, I don't think that's confusing, because everybody understood. So actually, one thing I would like to say that like in Peanut, like a Peanut Foundation is serving, ICIT has been behind bringing the genome sequencing that is have been costly and also complex. Then again, you are bringing researchers across the world on the one platform by conducting AGB conference. So that we have not seen in many crops so like regularly. Even in case of if you see rice, I think it may be not every year. I don't know if rice, if it is happening, because rice, any conference is there like it is happening international conference all the years, like every year like that?
No, I think in 3-4 years they have conducted one.
Yeah, so they have maybe, but only Peanut, like we have the conference that each year, and we discuss, and then we like move forward, share experience, collaborate. So this is like a very good platform. So that
We also will be supporting your conference that you're going to have here, the Drought Conference next February, right?
okay.
We're a proud sponsor of that as well.
Okay.
For example, I'd like to hear your opinion. In the U.S., production is about 7%. So you just showing the number, like a National Peanut Board, $1 million to support research from the checkout. Use that as an example. India produce 15%, right? More than 15% local peanuts. If they're doing the Because other than U.S., India and China totally depend on government funding. Government money is really small. In the U.S., we have very little government money. Here, it's all from non-profit organizations.
We don't have the money to pay salaries of scientists and build buildings and all that kind of stuff. The government does that either through the University of Georgia, say, or through USDA. They have the experts. But when the university or when the Peanut Foundation can provide even small grants of maybe 10, 20, 50, $100,000, it really can make a difference in the operating budget of that scientist if they've got money to pay labor, to buy supplies, to travel with, those type of things. Generally, the government budget is not real good. So it's a leveraging that you've got money that you can show that government entity that, hey, I'll put in my money if you'll put in yours. And it's worked well.
Really, I like to give everybody an example. For me, working for USDA, working for government. Basically, my salary, my operating money, everything, I receive my project receiving $400,000 from U.S. government every year. But that including my salary, my technician salary, operating, the power utility, and also for the centralized support, like secretary, all those. Bottom line is every year I have $30,000 operating money. So I take everything out from that $400,000, $30,000 left. If I can receive $30,000 from peanut money, that's 100% increase to my discretionary fund. So that's really, really good to support the research for the good of.
So maybe when we will discussing at Mahbub Nagar with those local administrative people, they belong to government like offices, and they were asking actually, their curiosity was there if Peanut Foundation is a government organization and it is giving funds to the researchers. But they were amazed to know that this is not a government organization. This is a like organization which receives money from industry and gives to researchers to develop better products and then bring back into the farmer's field. So they have now like a clear-cut picture what about the Peanut Foundation is like. And maybe they will come up in future, maybe something. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. No, nobody will blame.
We're open to a lot of different ideas, and every year when these proposals come in, we send those proposals to a external review group, and they give us their reviews. Then they come back to the board of directors, and we sit around the table and talk about it. And it depends really on the board of directors. They are the final vote. I can have some influence on them, and I can try to explain to them. Most of them are not scientists. They are pretty sharp people, but you can explain to them what the merits of this proposal are versus this one, and they come to a decision. In recent years, it's been a bit of a balance between basic genomics work, which had to be done. There was no genomics work on peanut until recent years. So some of the basic sequencing had to be done. Baju was a part of getting that started back several years ago. And now we're to the point that we're looking for applications to this genome. We're looking for marker selection, and we're looking for breeding techniques and things that we can actually go to the breeder and give him what we call a toolbox and say, these are the tools that you can use to breed better varieties. So I think the emphasis now that we're in the 4th year of this 5-year cycle, we're shifting to more applied work. We're trying to get some real accomplishments done. Although there still needs to be some basic genomic work. It's not all finished. But we're going to try to keep that basic work going. but we've got to keep our funders happy too. We've got to be able to go to them and say, look at this variety that was developed by marker-assisted breeding. And we've got a few of those now. We've got the nematode-resistant variety, and we've got some other things that we can point to that these are real accomplishments and only the beginning of a lot of new things that are going to happen. So for the most part, everybody's happy. The funding organizations seem to be pleased with the progress we've made up to this point. But in the end, when this money runs out, the $6 million commitment, the work's not finished. We still are going to have a lot to do, and we're going to have to go back to them and say, this is what we've done, this is where we want to go in the future. I will say that over the last few years, at first, the peanut industry was open to GMO technology. They voted to fund some GMO research. But over time in the U.S., the food movement, if you will, in the U.S. has become so strong, and there's so many anti-GMO people. I think the tendency right now is to kind of back off from that and see where that goes. And they feel much more comfortable supporting marker-assisted breeding than they do GMO. Doesn't say we won't fund it. If there's a really good proposal, perhaps we would. But for right now, the emphasis seems to be going to marker-assisted breeding.
Like from growers directly, like a kg per ton or something like that. In India, actually, because of land fragmentation and less mechanization, the production cost is very high. So the farmers are not getting good returns actually in peanut farming. So that's one reason actually the farmers are not happy. So in that condition, it is difficult to take money from the growers here. So when the production cost is less, when the mechanization is uprising, probably the farmers are willing to pay. So for this kind of foundations, commodity-based foundations, so maybe we can pool money directly from the growers from point of sale. But it is difficult in India.
Good
Raising
point.
money directly from growers.
Right. And if you do that, you have to enforce it so that everybody does it, and then it becomes an enforcement issue. How do you make sure that everybody's paying? In the U.S., we have distinct buying points. If you're going to sell peanuts, you've got to come to those buying points, and that's where it happens. With all the, personal transactions that might go on, there's no way to really police that and collect money. So, like I said, it's got to be the growers that organize and do it. You can't just, with a stroke of a pen, make it happen.
I think what we do today, for example, in China, the extension really does not do the job. So the farmer does not know. When you talk to the farmer, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of varieties. Didn't know. Really, we as a scientist also part of our job to deliver the information and knowledge to the farmers, also to tell them. Even for farmers in India, if average yield like 200 kilo per hectare should be minimum, right? 1 kilo, you can lose 1 kilo actually. Really, it's not much. But you have to tell them that 1 kilo really worth what the information has given. Tell you.
So, Hari, just you mentioned that maybe farmers will not be able to contribute. What about other players like industry, like sellers, and then other industry, those who are in using peanuts in there? So, do you think that they are able to contribute?
Yeah, they can contribute, but as Bauju said, we don't have in India like a system where to regulate the farmers like buying points. The farmers can sell anywhere, right? So if there is a registered buying point, all the farmers has to go to that particular point and they have to sell their product there itself. Then probably you will have a track on the product. But here there is no such registered selling points or buying points.
Okay, sir. Any question? No? So let's thank Dr. Steve Brown for his nice lecture presentation and sharing views about Peanut Foundation. And also thanks for their visit to IFRI site once again. Dr. Steve Brown and Dr. Baujugo.